Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, we are discussing Dokken's Tooth and Nail album. This album was their second studio album, and it was released in 1984. I love this album cover. It just screams early 80s LA metal. Love the hand here. I remember seeing a video of the band live during this era, and they had like a prop on stage of this hand. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder where that hand is now. You know, maybe it's in one of the guys in the band. It's in their shed, or it's in their garage with like a tarp over it or something. So, and then you got the picture of the band on the back here. So in the band, we've got Don Dokken on vocals. We've got George Lynch on guitar, Jeff Pilson on bass, and Mick Brown on drums. The album was produced by Tom Werman and Roy Thomas Baker. Tom Werman also worked with Poison and Twisted Sister and LA Guns. So he was a guy that was sort of in there in the whole LA glam hair metal thing. Now, I've mentioned in other videos that I'm a big fan of like what I call the first wave of, if you want to call it hair metal, LA metal, whatever you want to call it. The early Dokken, early Twisted Sister, early Rat, early Motley. I really love that. And this is one of my favorite albums from that whole early 80s LA metal thing. And this is my favorite Dokken album for sure. The production on the album, it's good. It sounds really 80s. My only complaint would be that the bass, there's bass frequency, but the bass guitar is very undefined. You can't really hear the bass on the album. It's just no definition to the bass. It's there, but you can't really pick out the notes that he's playing. And a lot of times the album reminds me, the mixes remind me of like a Van Halen mix, where there's one guitar, rhythm guitar, and sometimes when even the solos come in, it drops out. And without like a nice thick present bass, it just sometimes sounds a little bit hollow. So and the other thing too is that I was listening to this, there's like a shift in kind of production value between some of these songs, and it makes me wonder if like some of the songs were recorded at one time and then recorded at another time, or recorded at different locations. I really don't know, but there's like a subtle like little production value shift between a couple of the songs, which is a little bit strange. So it's just not consistent sort of production-wise through the whole thing. What I find really interesting about Dokken is the combination of George Lynch and Don Dokken. Let's talk about George Lynch first. He's, in my opinion, one of the greats of this whole LA metal scene thing of that time. He has a really unique sound. It's very sort of mid-rangey and compressed and like warm distortion, sustainy sound to it. Like when he plays his lead sound is very compressed and sort of focused sounding. And his way of playing his leads, it's very elastic. You know, he's got his bends and he has a lot of like pull-offs and fast little lines, and his riffing is really unique too. He just he doesn't just play stock power chords all the time. He plays like a lot of like around the power chords and stuff, which I think is really cool. So his rhythm parts are always really interesting. And then Don Dokken has this really kind of relaxed, sweet sounding kind of voice, and the contrast of George's heavy riffing and Don's sort of sweet melodic voice is, to me, what makes Dokken really interesting. And the combination of their writing styles too. Don was the guy that sort of had the melodic pop sensibility, and George was the guy with like the metal riffing, guitar blazing type of thing that he brought to the band. And apparently the two of them just clashed like right from the beginning, even on this album, only their second album. But it works for me, and I think that contrast between the two of them, and you put it together, and it really makes for a really interesting sound, and a lot of really catchy songs, melodic songs, but still with some really cool heavy riffing in them. So the album starts with Without Warning. I mentioned earlier there isn't a lot of guitar overdubs. Well, this one there is. It's an instrumental. It's got some acoustic guitar, like arpeggiated guitar things, and some layered guitar parts. It just sort of sets up the album, holds out on this chord at the end, and then it goes into the blazing Tooth and Nail. That like fast riff from George, and This is a great song, Tooth and Nail. You know, the gang background vocals. I love the guitar solo in this one. George does like a Eddie Van Halen style tapping thing, but he's just sort of descending on all the strings. And then it shifts up and he sort of does the same thing. It's really awesome, man. George had a ton of technique, but a really great feel. Next, Just Got Lucky, which was one of the sort of singles off it, videos from the album. This is a good example of Don and George. You know, George starts off with this melodic guitar line, and Don has this really melodic, sweet vocal line to this one. It's a really catchy, should have known better. You know, the verse is really catchy. The chorus is really catchy. It's got some really nice guitar stuff in it. Heartless Heart, kind of a straight ahead rocker, more gang vocals in a really 80s style. Heartless Heart. Don't Close Your Eyes is another fast, kind of upbeat ripper with some really great guitar playing in it. When Heaven Comes Down, this is another one that has sort of a signature Dokken rhythm and feel to it for me. It's like this one is kind of slow and laid back. Reminds me a little bit of like It's Not Love, which would come on their later albums. John, 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 when heaven comes down. You know, it's just sort of sits back in the pocket. Don Dokken wailing in the vocals, and George, you know, playing his little guitar fills between the riffs. Next, another heavy one, Into the Fire. This one's a real metal sounding one. It's got a real minor key kind of riff. Drops out, acoustic guitar thing in the verses there, and then it gets heavy again with the big chorus. Bullets to Spare is kind of a straight ahead rocker. A little bit forgettable for this one, a little bit generic really for me. Sounds, you know, kind of like a lot of other LA metal things that were going on at that time. Then next, maybe the biggest hit off this record, Alone Again, a real awesome power ballad. And I remember the video for this really maybe kind of started this whole video trend of like seeing images of the slow motion images of the band on stage and the band backstage and everything. And this is just a great one, super catchy. Don's vocal melody is awesome. George's guitar solo in this is awesome. Maybe one of my favorite guitar solos from him, and a great example of just Don's melodicism and George's heavy riffing. The verse is kind of laid back with the acoustic guitars, and then the big distorted guitars come in. And then the album ends with Turn on the Action, with real fast, upbeat riff, which reminds me a lot of like Van Halen, like maybe like I'm the One or something off of the first Van Halen record. It's got sort of that fast, bouncy type riff feel to it. Turn on the action! More gang vocals. So all right, there you go. This is one of my favorites from the hair metal era, Dokken's Tooth and Nail. It's got a lot of the elements that, for me, made the hair metal LA metal thing really unique and special. That melodic sense, but still cool riffing, cool guitar playing, and just cool songs, you know, on the record. So, all right, there you go. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this album, Dokken, Tooth and Nail. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.